And hello and welcome to the Spiritual Gentleman podcast. My name is Dave, and I am here with the amazing Scott Simpson. And we are here talking about ADHD in men, how it affects us, our stories, and everything like that. If you're watching this in the ADHD support group, welcome everybody as well. That's how I actually got to meet Scott. And yeah, so I'm going to turn it over to Scott. Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. I found the group, just I think within the last month or two, and I really enjoyed just everyone's perspective there. And it's just really wanted me to get to know other people that are going through the same or similar things that I am, struggles and successes. And but as far as like where I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah. I was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 4 and was treated for a couple of years. And then at one point I told my mom, I don't like the medication I'm taking. And she's like, okay, then we won't take it. But at that time, there really wasn't much else outside.
Can I ask how old were you when you made that decision?
I was 10. I remember the day too. It was summertime. And I just remember waking up determined that I wanted to, work myself because medication just made me feel irritable all the time, and it just wasn't for me.
Yeah, no, I can relate because by the age of basically about 13, 14, I was pretty adamant where I told my parents I wanted to get off. I was on Ritalin. I had some kind of other issues with it, but it was at this point of where, for me, I had found cooking as my way of handling my ADHD,
awesome.
how to master it. Did you find something what was kind of the driving force of because I know for me, it actually got me not to eat. There was a lot of other especially as a young kid,
right.
A lot of health issues. Was there anything that was a driving factor of you're all right, I want to do this on my own, or you're this is just not working for me?
I the only thing that I really remember was just feeling like it didn't make me feel good. And I don't know if I could put it to words at that time, but I really liked to run. So, just being outside, running, playing basketball was my thing. And that really helped me kind of, push myself forward to just handling life on my own. I remember my parents told me that when I started, because I started Ritalin as well. I felt like that was the only drug at the time, really. Probably wasn't, but there wasn't a lot. But I just remember thinking that it didn't make me feel good. They told me that it slowed me down enough to learn how to communicate with people better. And I felt like I had a grasp on that at that point. And, I figured out enough of how to talk to people. And that's just kind of how I lived my life for the next 19 years. And I didn't start getting treatment again until just a couple of years ago.
And then what inspired you to get back into treatment, or kind of revisit it, or kind of look at new strategies?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think I've ever been asked that before. I've gone to therapy. I've gone through. I have an ADHD coach, and never been asked that. But 2019 was a really hard year. I was having a lot of marital struggles at that time. Divorce was on the table. My wife was pregnant at the time. I was also going through a faith crisis and left my childhood church that I came to know, and really just, I can't say that love was the word because it made me fear the world. I feel like that's a whole other conversation. And then also at that time had just changed jobs from a W-2 to what I do now, where I'm on my own. I'm trying to build my practice. There was just a lot of things happening, and I think the some characteristics of my ADHD were starting to be inflared a little bit, and it was just getting really, really hard to just handle life. And so that's where I started. I went to a psychiatrist and talked about medication options, told him my history, and we started Adderall. That was kind of the new road. Adderall made me a monster, according to my wife. Vyvanse is another one I tried, and eventually I thought maybe I should go see a doctor who really specializes in this and not just a general psychiatrist. And I found someone who really helped me on a path to I don't know, just better handle my ADHD symptoms and just struggles, which I've now found a lot more strengths in that because of that. Started therapy again, or not again, but I started therapy as well, kind of work through these things to kind of help coach me through. And yeah, I'm just really grateful that there are more resources today to help us through that.
And it's, yeah, no, I totally agree too, because it was like for most of my 20s, I was like, I was a chef. So I knew at age like 15, I was going to be a chef. And I had this very, very hyper focus of, for me, because cooking was the way I was able, because I'm also a kinesthetic learner. So I had to physically touch and do something. And in a kitchen environment, when you have all that stimulation, it allowed me to like, because I have 3 or 5 things different going on, allowed me to focus on the one and knock everything out. But it was also an unhealthy way of me to deal with it because I wasn't really addressing my ADHD. And it was until, and which led into, for me, some alcoholism issues and some other kind of like really like led me to burnout. And I recognized a lot of the things came back to me not accepting my ADHD and not accepting it as who I am as a person, as this growing. One of the things that I've gone through therapy, that one of the key factors for me was learning how to love myself. I think especially because I was diagnosed at 9. So you, as someone who also at this young age, you get this, I think, thought in the back of your head. I don't know if you had this, where like, I must be defective. Like I must be a broken person. And even if you can have all the bravado in the world, that internal voice, like the little child will still say, doesn't matter how much you've accomplished, like I still feel that kind of brokenness until I kind of accepted my ADHD.
Right. I think that, I talk about the things that were going on in my life when I started therapy and medication again. So 2019, that's like the big year for me. And I talk about all these things that were happening, but I think you really hit it there on the nail, that it wasn't the things that were going on. It was the feelings that were coming out because of these things happening. Because, I know that there are people who have it worse off than I do. And, if they have my life, they'd probably think that it was great, even with the struggles. And so it was just those feelings, those self-doubting and those self-sabotaging feelings that I would enable. And I didn't want to do that anymore, right? Because, everyone in my life tells me that they love me, that they think I'm great. And I just never really saw that. And I thought it was because I was defective. Like, why can't I focus on something long enough to get good at it? Why do I feel like I'm a jack of all trades, master of none? And
or like me, if I misspell one word, like if I just like I'm like, I must be the worst fucking speller in the like you just blow up at yourself.
Yeah, like I before E, like I'm like, I always get that one mixed up. Maybe there is some dyslexia in there. I don't know. I've heard of a lot of people with ADHD also have other struggles that they have, or other mental health struggles. And anyways, I could go on and on. I could ramble about all of this, but it really just came down to, I wanted to have a better relationship with myself, and I just didn't know it at the time. And
I think that's one of the amazing things about once we begin to understand the ADHD, and particularly like, there is something to be said about for medication. For a lot of people, it's really effective, but I find it's just one tool of like, how do I want to live my life, right? Like we're talking about daily living of like, do I want to be in suffering? Do I want to constantly be at the agony of my mind and my dopamine of like running from next thing to next thing? Is my mind in control, or am I in control? And how can I learn to,
yeah, absolutely. I think about that all the time, at least more than I ever did. I think I've let my brain just run my life for so long, and it made me feel out of control, which isn't a good feeling.
No, and I think also for men in particular, right? One thing I find in particular with, I think, men growing up, say, my guess is like, I'm 39, I just had a birthday. So I'm assuming you're right around my age, or like, I'm going to guess like 20s, 30s.
30, I'll be 30 next month.
30, yeah, okay. So like the same kind of, so in that generation of men, we're kind of still taught like we don't express our feelings, where like everything has to be internal. And now it's like, all right, in order for us to heal with this, when especially the 90s, ADHD was just handed out to every kid. All right, you're rambunctious. Here's like, oh, by the time you're adult, it'll disappear. It's like, no, you have to learn, okay, if I'm wired differently, let's take it and let's work with it and not against
Right.
it. And it's this, and it's, I think especially as men too, we're told to like fall into this box when, especially with this kind of disorder, we're a wide variety, we have all the colors.
Yeah, a couple of things that came to mind that I've, just even recently, yesterday, I actually posted in the group about this, but yesterday was a pretty good day overall. Like I was really busy at work. I stayed productive, and I'm taking classes for my CFP designation, which stands for Certified Financial Planner. And it's just a high prestigious designation for financial advisors. It shows fiduciary standard.
I was gonna say, would that make you a fiduciary? Because I read the
Yes.
Tony Robbins money, master your money, and always looked out for the fiduciaries.
Yeah. So I consider myself a fiduciary. Like I'm licensed, but I want the CFP designation to indicate, because it's a very common designation to have, right?
Yeah.
But I've had such a hard time getting myself to study for this exam. I've taken it before and I didn't pass, but it's because I didn't put in enough time for it. And that's something that I've been really embarrassed to like just say out loud to people. And so the fact that I'm on this interview saying it, it feels good. But it's because, another thing that I've struggled with my ADHD, and I think others do too, and you probably can attest to this, is that because your brain can be on autopilot, it's just one thing, it's going on to one thing after another. You overcommit yourself, and therefore you can't commit to anything or commit to doing well at anything because you've overcommitted. And that's what I've been doing. And I've been having to learn how to like let go of what my brain wants sometimes and just do what's best for me by taking stuff off my plate so that I can have a healthy life. That was a big thing that I thought about when you were talking about like putting men in this bubble of the man has to be this man of a man. And I'm like, I'm not that guy. I'm slower than most, and I'm just different. So
yeah,
anyway.
and it's this in the sense that we can still be what it means to be a man. Like one of my kind of general questions of why I started the Spiritual Gentleman, kind of my ideas, what it means to be a man in the 21st century. All right, if we want to get past like the woke culture and everything like that, of like all these evolutions as we're continuing to change and grow, what does that look like for that? We've had a feminist kind of movement. What does it look like for a male movement of like, how do we get in touch with not just our masculine and the feminine? How do we become total better human beings? Better at
just
being
in general.
Yeah, and just in general, right? Like,
it's funny that you say that too. I feel like my whole life I've had this internal, this internal drive to just be a better human, and gender was never really part of the equation. And like that's, gender inequality was something that I saw growing up all the time. I just love what you said, that it's not just about being a better man. It's not just about being in touch with your feminine side. It's just about being a better human. I think that's what this feminist movement is about too, is that we just all need to be better humans. Women have a place in this world just as much as men do. Like we're not any better. I don't think we're better.
Exactly. You need both sexes, right? You need one without the other, right? Like it's a chicken and egg scenario.
So yeah, like just learning about my ADHDs helped me accept that and not be afraid of just being a better human. Anyways.
And I think also with ADHD and RSD as well, like that it's okay for us to be emotional and our emotions are okay, right? I think especially as men, we're told our emotions can only be shown like the 5 seconds after your team wins the Super Bowl, or there's a crazy score, or at your dad's funeral, or at a funeral or some event. That's the only time you can show emotion. Like any other time, you're not allowed. And I call bullshit to that, right? Because that means I'm denying a part of my humanity of what makes me a person. And it's like denying that I don't have ADHD, right? Like for a long time, I had this internal, I denied it. And instead of, if I accept it, then I can actually deal with the issue, right? Until I accept I have that something's there. If I keep saying denying, then I never actually will address what's actually going on. And when I can address it, I can actually solve it. So my next question, I want to roll into, because you talked about financial planning and that you help ADHD people in particular with financial planning. So how did you get into financial planning, and how have you found that your ADHD has helped you with that, or has it hindered you at all with numbers?
Yeah.
Because I know some people are great with numbers, some people aren't. So,
you know why? To answer that last question, I think that's a really important one. Is that I still have ADHD, and because of that, finances can still be hard for me in my personal life, and sometimes I go to unobjective third parties to talk about my own personal situation with, because going back to your RSD comment earlier, like that's something that I experience on a daily basis. And when I'm stressed about any sort of financial, like if a medical bill comes up and it's bigger than I expected, I'm going to feel that emotion. But that's why I've talked to someone that isn't involved in my family to make a plan for me. So yeah, I feel like that's really important for all of us, especially with ADHD. It's hard to take that emotion out when RSD is a factor. Getting into the field, before this, I actually wanted to be a music teacher. I was a percussion major at the University of Utah, and on the drum line, I did drum line all through high school, jazz band. And
can I ask you, because I successfully failed at drums from grade 6 all the way to high school, successfully failed, couldn't keep a beat until my senior year, until I actually had a teacher teach me. So what is your favorite percussion instrument? I was always a fan of the quad toms and the marching band, because I could get away with doing anything.
Right. So I have two, and it's because they're different sections of percussion. So concert percussion, I love the marimba, which is big xylophone for those who don't know. Yeah. But 4 mallets, that would be my favorites. 4 mallet marimba pieces. So was the snare drum in marching bands. That was my absolute favorite. So movie drum line with Nick Cannon, not super. That's like the best, easiest way to explain what that's like. So I wish we would have gone to DCI, the drum corps. Who doesn't know, but yeah, that's what I wanted to do. Like that was like your cooking was my percussion. That's what I wanted to do.
And that's a great ADHD thing too, right? Because it's physical, it keeps you present. Like you have to kind of learn to keep the beat, so you're on like the mind is there. It's.
I have my drum pad and a pair of sticks, like just sitting in my house, and I pull it out when I just need to take a break and kind of just press. Just gets my fidgets out. My dad was also my band teacher in high school, and I really liked what he was doing. But one thing that my mom told me was that he was never home, so she never saw him. And that was a really hard thing for me to hear, because I really wanted to be in this music field, but I also wanted a family and to be able to provide for them financially. And I love my dad very much. We don't have the greatest relationship, but I do love him very much for everything he's done. But both my parents had to work, and I wanted to be in be in a field where I didn't have to do that, and that ruled teaching out. So I didn't really know where to go, and my wife was taking this finance class in college. We were going to college at the same time, and it was taught by a CFP advisor here in the Salt Lake area, and I just fell in love with it. I think I really liked the idea because I was really getting into budgeting in our personal lives at that time. Didn't really know much more, but I really liked having my savings get bigger because I was budgeting.
It's a nice feeling when you see the number go up versus going down.
Right. And I wasn't looking every day. I was looking at periodically, and it was just nice to see that go up. Like every day, that's really hard. It's like watching a cup being filled with water, but one little drop at a time. That's really hard to watch. So I just check on it every now and then. And that's just what I wanted to do. I felt like that was like the organization that I wanted in my own life. And I think I wanted it for myself, but now I want to help others feel that same relief of, okay, there is a plan. Nothing's changed other than I have a plan. And that just takes so much stress when it comes to our finances, because life should be about living life. It shouldn't be about making a paycheck. But we do need
it's just knowing where you can go and how you can do it. It's
right.
I have an interesting relationship with budgeting and planning, because my dad was he was the financial director at Alaska Airlines for 25 years, and
Oh,
basically
wow.
of the reporting, right? So he was like director
Yeah.
of the reporting. And my mom worked for a credit card counselor, a debt counselor. So she cut up people's credit cards and
Okay.
handled debt. So like I've been afraid to get a credit card kind of thing. So like budgeting has like been like pounded into me, but of course my young rebellious side was like, I'm going to go to the most creative field I can possibly go into.
Right.
And now I'm like, okay, hey, mom and dad, can you teach me about budgeting? Because I need to I want to raise a family now. I need to make money.
Right. Absolutely. No, so you definitely had your exposure to it then.
Yeah. So actually, this is going to lead into my next question. For someone with ADHD, do you have any like particular tips or strategies for someone just starting out, or little things that would help them with coming up with budgeting and planning? Like for me, one of the things my mom taught me, she used to take Monopoly money and the Monopoly board. So we'd write on each of the squares, you write on like your go was your how much you got per month, and then each square was a different bill, so your rent, and then so you physically put the money around, so you saw where your money went as a visual. That's a tool I use. Do you have any tools or suggestions that you give to your clients?
Yeah, I have a few for sure. The first one that I would suggest is, if you want to save, to automate the process. And the second rule that I would apply to that is make it difficult to stop. So go to the system that your company has to edit your direct deposit, set up a savings account. Whatever amount that works for you, like whatever you can set aside, I would do it. One of the fears that people have though is that they don't have the money to save. But if you're anything like me, you have money to save, you can just spend a little less each month. Amazon is super easy to access. If I need something, and within 30 seconds, I can buy something. Just a matter of searching for it and then clicking buy now. So automate the savings process. I would also put that savings account somewhere that's not with your regular bank, so that you don't see it on a regular basis. It's just money is going away, and it's building up this emergency fund in case you lose your job. And I recommend having 3 to 6 months worth of savings in that account. That's like the number one thing that I run into, is that savings is never enough to cover an emergency, which I can see why it's stressful for those with ADHD. It's because you're on high alert all the time. But if you have a little emergency fund just kind of hanging around in the back, you need a new car. Well, you now have 5,000-10,000 in your bank account that you can put towards your car.
Exactly. And if it's in that space of where you don't see it every time, so it's out of sight, out of mind, and then it's only when you get to that no moment, or like, oh crap, I need a solution, then your brain's like, oh yeah, hey, remember that thing we hit on yourself. Right.
We hid it from you.
Yeah.
I would also say with that though, the struggle of wanting to the impulse buying is still going to be a problem, or at least a struggle. Like the savings account will help. You'll spend a little less because of that forced savings. You won't even see the money, right? Yeah. So you don't see it. It's out of sight, out of mind. But I would also set up a personal spending account that's outside of the account that has your bills. And I would, I would suggest putting 5 to 10% in there. I like 5% just because I want to save more for my future. But that 5% is for me to spend on whatever I want. There's no limits. It could be whatever I want. There's something big that I want to save for, that personal account, that 5%, that's what that's for. If I want to go out to eat every day, that's what that account's for. So it's just to help control my spending so that I can pay my bills without stress, and have a savings being built behind me.
Yeah, so you everything has its own kind of space. I like that a lot. It's something I do, is that part of like when I'm doing my tasks kind of for the day, I give myself a little reward. So behind me, it's I have a Lego obsession, which is a very expensive hobby. It's very, very expensive. But so one of my little kind of like saving up to buy some of these more expensive models and sets is that if I complete a goal for the day, all right, I need to get back to 5 emails. If I can get that done in whatever time frame, that's $10 that I put down, or I kind of put it towards a little jar that I put away. So I try to use my impulse spending in like to my advantage to get things done versus just like feeling bad for it.
Absolutely. I love the reward system there. That's a great thing. That's also too, if you have a jar, like having something physical is a lot easier to for an ADHD brain to wrap their head around. Looking at a screen with numbers on it doesn't always do it for your brain, unless the number is a big one.
And I heard this was many years ago. So this is not even just with people in general. When paying with a credit card versus paying cash, when you pay cash, your brain sends off a signal, I am giving something up. When you tap or pay with a card, doesn't set off that same chemical signal. So you don't actually feel, that you're actually spent any money. You're like, oh, like you spent, but you didn't act like you spent it, but you didn't get the feeling or like the loss of that you actually spent the money versus paying with cash. It was just one of those little psychology things of like, even when I do my bills, I'm like, okay, like I automate all my bills. So I don't have to think about when my bill comes out. I just put at the beginning of the month when I get my check, that money goes into my bill account. It comes out. I don't have to think about it because otherwise, the lights would probably be going off right about now, right?
I'm right about now.
We're gonna fix that in post with the light show.
The light. Oh my God. Yeah, awesome. You're totally right about that. Using a credit card, even a debit card, it's just a tap or a swipe. So it takes a lot more control to not overspend. I'm in favor of using credit cards. I think that there are benefits to them, but only if you can control your spending. If you can't, they're not for you.
Yeah, I think that's very key, right? Of knowing how to use debt to your advantage versus to your disadvantage. I think especially in the US too, because there's so many, like my mom, I think it took me to the far extreme because I listened growing up to hearing people at like age 27 with like $500,000 credit card debt, like working 9 to 5, so like I get freaked out to a point where now that I live in Ireland, like I'm like, okay, now I'm going to get a credit card. I'm outside the US banking system. So she can't yell at me. She said she would disown me as a son if I got Capital One. If I ever got a Capital One credit card, she would cut me out of the will. So like, I'm like,
that's it.
Exactly. Yeah. So like that was enough of a threat for me.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it.
Awesome. Well, we're kind of just winding down here. I just want to say thank you again, Scott, for being my very first interview. Really appreciate it. I just wanted to give you an opportunity. So if you do financial planning, particularly for people with ADHD, you want to talk a little bit about your services and what you offer, and then I'll get some of your contact info and I'll put it up with the post as well.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed my time. And a little bit about what I do is two main services, really. One is investment management. We're an independent firm. We're tied to a brokerage firm called Securities America. If you're not familiar with them, they're similar to a firm like Fidelity or TD Ameritrade, but they're independent. And what that means is that we can use whatever products or whatever investments we like, and they don't have to be tied to Securities America. They can be anywhere. So that's anywhere from investments to annuities to insurance. So that's number one. Number two is we do comprehensive planning. That is where we go. I like to talk about your values and your goals first, and getting to know you. That's usually what my first session entails. It's just getting to know you. If we both feel like that we've got that down in that first meeting, we can continue on to the financial portion. If not, I usually have a second session where we talk about the financial side, and that's where we talk about your budgeting, cash flow, your savings position, your investments, your taxes. We don't file taxes, but we do tax strategy planning. We do retirement planning and projecting to to make a plan of how much to save, and as well as talking about your estate plan to make sure that you have things in line to help pass your estate on to whoever you'd like to after you pass. So those are pretty much all the services that we offer. So it's a comprehensive view of your financial health and creating a plan that's simple and easy for you to remember so that you can enjoy your life and that your future self can enjoy their lives too.
Excellent. That's amazing. Yeah, no, I think it's a very critical piece of, especially, I think, building our own life. I think as entrepreneurs, and particularly for the entrepreneurs watching this as well, of where I think in our generation, we're kind of told, I think personally, right? And this is just my own opinion here, the 9-to-5 model, college model, does not work in the new generation. In the Web 2.0, Web 3.0, this is not the way to build sustainable wealth. The way to do it now is actually by being entrepreneurial, by being your own business, by having someone like you to help you to financially plan so you can actually have your money work for you instead of working against you, right? Like, this idea of working for 40, 50 years so you get 15 years of relaxation doesn't seem like a good deal to me. Like, so finding the way out and finding that solution.
Not at all. And if I could add to that just really quick, for entrepreneurs, the most common thing that I run into is that they don't have a plan for their own retirement. All of their money is going back into their business, which can be good, but you also need to make sure that you not only take care of yourself now, take care of your business now, but you also need to take care of your future self. Like, that's the most important thing. Really what I try to drive home is we need to include our future selves, which ADHD brains have a hard time thinking about that. I sure do. But that's why I have a plan and I update it frequently, just because I just want to be invested in it, literally, no pun intended.
Exactly, because if you take care of yourself today, you invest in your future tomorrow. Ooh, you can take that line. That's a great line.
Hey, I'm going to take that, copyright it. You can't have it.
All right, no worries. Awesome. Once again, Scott, thank you so much. I will grab a link from you for your site, and I'll put that in the post when we put it out there as well. And I just want to say very good yay, and I wish everybody a great, if not better, day. And stop the pause, but I don't know where the recording is. Oh, there it is. It's up the top.